The story so far is this: have you ever had that gut-wrenching moment when your world seems to tilt on its axis in the dead of night? That's exactly what happened when I stumbled upon my partner texting someone else at 2 a.m. My heart raced as questions flooded my mind. Who could it be? Why the secrecy? As I watched the soft glow of their phone light up the room, I felt a mix of fear and betrayal. Could this be the beginning of the end for us, or is there a reasonable explanation waiting just beyond the shadows of doubt? I'm a 32-year-old woman, and I've been with my partner Alex for over 5 years now. We live in a cozy apartment in the city, both of us juggling demanding jobs that often seep into our personal time. I'm in marketing while Alex works in tech, which means our schedules can be pretty hectic. Despite the chaos, we've always managed to carve out time for each other, and our relationship until now felt solid and reassuring. But lately, I've noticed subtle changes. Alex has been more protective of their phone, often keeping it on silent and flipped face down. Initially, I brushed off these observations, attributing them to Alex's increased workload. However, those small shifts planted seeds of doubt in my mind, slowly growing into an unease I couldn't quite shake off. Then came the night that changed everything. I woke up in the middle of the night to find Alex engrossed in their phone, fingers flying across the screen. It was as if my heart had dropped into my stomach. This wasn't just a passing text or a work email, it was an ongoing conversation, a fact confirmed by the frequency of the buzzing notifications. My initial reaction was a mix of confusion and dread. Was I overreacting? Was this just a harmless conversation? Yet the timing and secrecy suggested otherwise. It felt like a breach of the trust we had carefully built over the years. I found myself questioning everything: our connection, our future, and even my own perceptions. How did we get here, and what should I do next? Those questions have been looping in my mind ever since, urging me to seek clarity in the tangled web of emotions I now find myself ensnared in. In the days following that fateful night, I attempted to return to normalcy, hoping that my discovery was just a misunderstanding. But the gnawing suspicion lingered, refusing to let go. Each time Alex's phone buzzed, I felt a pang of anxiety, and each time they stepped away to take a call, my mind spun with possibilities. Things took a turn for the worse when Alex began working late more frequently. At first, I accepted it without question. Tech projects often demanded extra hours. However, one evening, Alex mentioned they were heading out to meet a colleague for dinner. This was unusual, as we typically spent our evenings together whenever possible. Something in their tone, a slight hesitation perhaps, made my heart sink. That night, I found myself restless, trying to focus on anything but the nagging fear that had settled in. When Alex returned, much later than expected, there was an unfamiliar scent of perfume clinging to their clothes. It was a subtle but undeniable indication that deepened my sense of betrayal. The emotional toll began to mount. I found myself oscillating between anger and self-doubt, questioning whether I was being paranoid or if my instincts were warning me of something real. My work suffered as I struggled to concentrate, my thoughts constantly drifting back to the situation at home. The breaking point came during a family gathering. While everyone was enjoying themselves, I noticed Alex stepping away frequently to check their phone. When questioned, they brushed it off as work emergencies. But the final straw was when I accidentally glimpsed a text notification with a heart emoji from an unknown number. My heart raced, and I felt a sharp, hollow ache in my chest. That evening, I confronted Alex. The confrontation was heated and emotional, filled with accusations and denials. Alex insisted it was nothing, just a friend they had recently reconnected with. But their defensiveness only fueled my fears. The argument left us both drained, with more questions than answers. In the days that followed, the atmosphere at home grew tense and strained. We began avoiding each other, both afraid to breach the chasm that had suddenly opened between us. The stress was overwhelming, and the silence was suffocating. This unexpected curveball, the emergence of a possible third party, escalated the situation to a level one wasn't prepared for. It left me feeling trapped in a cycle of suspicion and despair, desperately seeking clarity while fearing what the truth might bring. As our relationship teetered on the edge, I knew I had to confront the reality of our situation, but the path forward seemed more daunting than ever. In the aftermath of our confrontation, I realized that if there was any hope of salvaging our relationship, open communication was paramount. I decided to approach the situation with a more level-headed perspective. Even though my emotions were still raw, I suggested to Alex that we sit down and have an honest discussion about what was happening between us. During our conversation, I expressed my fears and suspicions, emphasizing the changes I had noticed and how they had affected me emotionally. To my relief, Alex seemed receptive, albeit defensive at first. They admitted that they had reconnected with an old friend, and that the secrecy was largely due to not wanting to upset me, acknowledging that it had been a poor decision to hide the friendship. We both agreed to try couples counseling as a way to navigate the murky waters of distrust that had seeped into our relationship. It was a difficult step for both of us, but I felt hopeful that with professional guidance we could rebuild the trust that had been lost. The sessions were emotionally draining, yet they provided a space for both of us to voice our concerns and feelings without fear of judgment. However, just as I started to see a glimmer of hope, another curveball hit us. Alex's company announced a major project that required them to travel frequently over the next few months. This development couldn't have come at a worse time, as it meant less time for us to work on mending our relationship. The frequent absences added another layer of stress and uncertainty. I tried to cope by keeping busy with my own work and leaning on friends for support. But with each trip, my insecurities resurfaced, and the distance felt both physical and emotional. Despite the challenges, I was determined not to let the situation spiral further. I took the initiative to set up regular video calls while Alex was away, and even planned a surprise weekend getaway for when they returned, hoping to rekindle some of the closeness we once shared. Yet the unpredictability of Alex's schedule often disrupted these plans, making it hard to maintain the momentum we had started building in counseling. The balancing act of trying to sustain my own well-being while nurturing a relationship on shaky ground left me feeling stretched thin, as if the ground beneath us could give way at any moment. As the days turned into weeks, the emotional toll of our strained relationship began to manifest in various aspects of my life. I found myself becoming increasingly withdrawn, hesitant to confide in friends or family for fear of judgment or unsolicited advice that might further complicate my already fraught emotional state. The once vibrant social life I enjoyed now felt like an overwhelming chore, as I often declined invitations, preferring solitude over the exhausting pretense of normalcy. At work, my performance began to suffer noticeably. Projects that once inspired creativity and enthusiasm now felt burdensome, my focus constantly hijacked by the lingering doubts and worries at home. Meetings that required my full attention became moments where my mind drifted, replaying conversations with Alex and imagining countless scenarios of what the future might hold. My colleagues noticed my distraction, their concerned inquiries only amplifying my sense of inadequacy. On the home front, the dynamic between Alex and me became a daily reminder of the chasm that had grown between us. Even mundane tasks like sharing a meal or watching a movie were overshadowed by the unspoken tension. Each moment of silence felt like a weight pressing down, a reminder of the unresolved issues that loomed over our interactions. Internally, I grappled with a persistent sense of hopelessness. The distance between us was palpable, and despite our best efforts, the path to reconciliation seemed increasingly elusive. I questioned my own judgment and decisions, wondering if I was holding on to something that was irreparably broken. The isolation I felt was compounded by a creeping sense of guilt, as if I were somehow to blame for not being enough, for not noticing sooner, or for failing to fix things. This guilt fed into a cycle of self-doubt, making it difficult to see a clear way forward. Despite these feelings, there remained a flicker of hope, an unwavering desire to find resolution, to rebuild what had been lost, and to restore some semblance of peace. Yet the journey towards that goal felt like an uphill battle, with every step shadowed by uncertainty and fear of what might be uncovered along the way. This experience has undeniably reshaped my perspective, forcing me to confront uncomfortable truths about myself and my relationship. As I continue to navigate this tumultuous period, I cling to the belief that somehow clarity and healing are possible, even if the path to get there remains shrouded in doubt. As time stretched on and our efforts to mend our relationship seemed to stall, I found myself wrestling with the possibility of taking more drastic measures. The thought of separation loomed large, a prospect I had never seriously considered until now. Yet, the weight of our unresolved issues and the emotional strain they brought made it increasingly difficult to ignore this potential path. The idea of a breakup filled me with dread, not only for the emotional upheaval it would cause, but also for the daunting logistics of disentangling our shared lives. Our apartment, our routines, our intertwined social circles, everything felt like a delicate web that would unravel if pulled apart. I feared the loneliness that might follow, the silent echoes of a life once filled with shared laughter and companionship. Social stigma also played a role in my hesitations. The thought of explaining our situation to friends and family, of enduring the pitying looks or the well-meaning but intrusive advice, was enough to make me hesitate. Would they understand the complexity of our situation, or would they simply see it as a failure? Despite these fears, the current state of limbo felt unsustainable. Each day without resolution chipped away at my sense of self and my hopes for the future. I found myself questioning whether clinging to the remnants of our relationship was worth the emotional toll it exacted. Yet, the uncertainty of what lay beyond kept me rooted in indecision. Would ending things bring the clarity and peace I craved, or would it only deepen the void I felt inside? The prospect of starting over was both terrifying and liberating, a paradox that left me feeling trapped between action and inertia. As I grappled with these considerations, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever decision I made would irreversibly shape the course of my life. I felt torn, balancing on a precipice, uncertain of whether to leap or to cling to the hope that somehow things might improve if I held on just a little longer. Reflecting on the whirlwind of emotions and events that have unfolded, I find myself at a crossroads, filled with uncertainty and yearning for clarity. This journey has been an emotional roller coaster, filled with moments of fear, doubt, and glimpses of hope that have left me feeling stretched thin. I'm caught between the desire to hold on to what once was and the growing realization that change might be necessary. As I sit with these feelings, I turn to this community, hoping to hear from others who might have walked a similar path. Have any of you navigated the complexities of rebuilding trust after discovering a breach? How did you manage the balance between holding on and knowing when to let go? Any insights or personal stories would be incredibly valuable as I try to chart a course forward. I understand there might not be a one-size-fits-all answer, but perhaps sharing this experience and hearing from those who face similar challenges can offer some solace or a new perspective I haven't yet considered. Even if it's just a shared acknowledgement of how tough these situations can be, knowing I'm not alone in this struggle might provide the comfort I need to take the next step, whatever that may be. Thank you for taking the time to read my story. Whether it's advice, a shared experience, or just a kind word, your responses are appreciated more than you know. I'm a 32-year-old woman struggling with trust issues after catching my partner texting late at night. We've tried counseling, but I'm considering separation, seeking advice on moving forward.